In Rules of Exponents Part 2, which I'll call Exponents 2, we are going to elaborate a little bit more. So I want to first of all go and review with you the rules that we did in the previous section. One, the power rule, or the one I call like bases. You want to add the exponents. The quotient rule, you subtract and keep the exponent where the larger exponent was. The power to a power rule, where you multiply the exponents. I call those power problems. The power of a product rule, which means the exponent will go on in each individual piece. Same thing with the quotient. If you have a fraction, that exponent will go on each part of the fraction. Okay? Now, let's go ahead and evaluate this expression for each of the x values given below. Okay? So let's see. If I plug this x in for that x in the little expression, 2 to the 4th power means 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, or 16. Okay. If we raise it to the 3rd power, it'll be 2 to the 3rd power, which is 8. If I raise it to the 2nd power, it would be 4. If I raise it, excuse me, to the 1st power, I get 2. And let's go ahead and add a 0 and a -1. If I add it to the 0 power, remember that anything to the 0 power is 1. And so let's see what's happening here, because you're probably wondering, how am I going to do the -1, right? Well, we're fixing to address negative exponents. And I'll give you a little peek at it right here. If I have 2 to the -1 power, first of all, a negative exponent is all about, excuse me, it's all about location. That's telling you it's in the wrong spot. So if I make that into a fraction, this fraction line is very, very powerful. I can move anything down past the fraction line or up past the fraction line, but it changes the sign of the exponent, like this. I can move him down, and that's going to make it a 2 to the +1 power down there. Now, because this is still a fraction, I need a placeholder, so I'll use a 1. And that makes the answer here 1/2. And so we're actually going to be addressing these last two in the rules that we're adding today. One is the 0 as an exponent. Anything to the 0 power is the number 1. Anything to the 0 power is 1. So if I have a 300 raised to the power of a 300 raised to the 0 power, it is equal to 1. If I have a -300 now, because it is in parentheses, everything in there is raised to the 0 power. So it is equal to 1. Anything to the 0 power is 1. Now, when you were raising to exponents before, we noticed that if the exponent is not included, if the negative sign is not included in the exponent, and how did we know that? It's not included in a parentheses to force it underneath the same exponent, then the negative is after the fact. And so 300 to the 0 power, this part is 1. But the negative is after the fact, isn't it? And we'll see that more and more as we go along. Let's see here. For negative exponents are all about position, guys. They are in the wrong spot. That's what they're telling you. So if you have something raised to a negative number like this, start by putting it over 1 and then move that guy. He's telling you, I'm not in the right part of the fraction. If he's got a negative exponent and he's in the top, that means he's supposed to be in the bottom, like this. If he starts with a negative exponent on the bottom, that means he's supposed to be in the top. So you're going to move him up, and he's going to look like that. Let's try it. If I have 4 to the -2 power, I need somewhere to move him, so I make it a fraction. The negative exponent is all about position, so you move him down. But because you move them down, I need to, again, continue with the idea that that's a fraction now. So I put a 1 in the top. Cleaning them up, I get 1 over 16. And this guy, same thing. He's in the wrong spot. Negative exponents are telling you, hey, I don't belong here. I belong in the other part of the fraction. That's going to give me 2 to the third on the top, which would just be 8. And again, I can drop the 1 that was on the bottom. Let's continue by looking at some examples that will illustrate these rules that we've just finished. If I have 10 to the 0, anything to the 0 power is 1. If I have negative 10 to the 0, well, because the negative is not included underneath the exponent, and I know that because he doesn't look like this. See, if he looked like that, that would be 1 because even the negative is included under the 0. Because he's not, this part of it is 1, and that negative is after the fact. This over here is very different. And I'm going to highlight it because that's not the question. That is if it looked like that. Okay? Now let's continue. We already know how to multiply some expressions and divide expressions and raise them to powers. So now we're just going to get to add the zeros and the negatives to what we were doing in the last section. When I'm multiplying these two expressions, I'm going to start off by multiplying the 3 and the 4 together. That is 12. When I multiply the x to the third times the x squared, like bases, we add the exponents. That is x to the 5th. And y to the 0 is just 1, isn't it? But what is it when you multiply 1 by all of this again? You're just going to get 12x to the 5th back, aren't you? Right. Let's see. Let's look at this guy. Now, I definitely want to clean up inside there before I raise it to the power. With order of operations, it says clean up inside the parentheses before you do exponents. So 3 over 6 becomes 1/2. X squared over x squared, hey, that cancels. That's pretty nice. Y to the 4th over y, that's going to give me a y to the 3rd on the top. Why? Because I subtract the exponents and I keep them on the top because that's where the larger one was. And then z to the 0 is just 1. Well, if that's 1 multiplied onto another 1, is just going to be 1. Now I can finish that off by multiplying or raising everything to the second power. 1 to the second power, I to the 3rd raised to the second power, and 2 raised to the second power. 1 squared is still just 1. Y to the 3rd raised to the second power is going to be y to the 6th, and 2 to the second power is going to be 4. Now, you do have the option not to write the 1 in front of the y to the 6th because it's not necessary, but I kind of like him, so I'm going to leave him alone. Now, let's deal a little bit with negative exponents. Excuse me. 3 to the negative 4. I need a place to move him, so make a fraction. I know that negative exponents are all about position. He's saying, I'm in the wrong spot, so move him. That's going to make that into a 3 to the 4th when I move him down, and I need my little placeholder. And I can clean that up. The 1 will stay, and 3 to the 4th when I do the arithmetic off in the margin is going to be 81. Same thing on this guy. I'm going to move this fraction, this 3 to the negative 2 up because he's telling me, hey, I'm in the wrong spot. So he becomes 3 to the 2nd up there over 1, which is just 9. More. Now, this is the same thing as 3 to the negative 2 over 4 to the negative 2. Both of those are in the wrong spot, so I'm just going to move them. That is going to be 4 to the positive 2 over 3 to the positive 2 because these guys have got to move, don't they? Negative exponents are all about position. The 3 to the negative 2 is telling you, I go down there. And the 4 to the negative 2 is saying, hey, I go up here. Now you're ready. 4 squared is 16, and 3 squared is 9. Negative 4 squared to the negative 2 power. Make it a fraction. Forgot to box that. Make it a fraction, and he's telling you I'm in the wrong spot because of the exponent on that is negative. So I'm going to move him down. That becomes a negative 4 to the positive 2 power. I can clean that up. Need my placeholder to make him a fraction. I get 1 over, and negative 4 squared is going to be a positive 16. Let's finish up a couple more, and then we'll go on to the next video. The 5 is fine, the 2 is fine, but this z to the negative 2, he's telling you, hey, I'm in the wrong spot. So let's move him. The 5 and 2 are fine. This guy's going to be moved up, and up here he becomes a z to the second power, and it's actually finished. Same here. The 2 is fine where he's at, but the m is telling you, hey, I'm in the wrong spot. Make it a fraction so you have a place to move him. But again, the only piece that's got a problem is that m. He's the only one with a negative exponent on it. So the 2 stays where he's at, and that m to the negative 5 is going to become m to the 5th on the bottom. I'll see you in the next video.